You know what they say about sacrifice? That it's noble, that it builds character, that the people you sacrifice for will remember and honor what you've given up. They're wrong. Dead wrong. And I'm sitting here today, 75 years old, to tell you exactly how wrong they are. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to remember where you were when you heard this story. The morning of my 75th birthday dawned gray and cold in Minneapolis, the kind of October day that makes you feel like winter's already won. I stood at my kitchen window, watching the frost kill what was left of my garden, and I should have known it was an omen. My house, the same house where I'd raised 3 children, where I'd hosted countless birthday parties and Christmas mornings, where I'd nursed sick babies and celebrated graduations, felt like a mausoleum. Every room echoed with memories that nobody else seemed to remember or care about. I'd been living alone for 2 years now, ever since Harold passed. The silence had become my companion, broken only by the occasional phone call from Marcus, my youngest, usually asking about money. Sarah called once a month, dutiful but distant, her voice always distracted by whatever crisis her teenagers were having. And David, well, David had made it clear years ago that family obligations were beneath him now that he'd made partner at his law firm. I was making my morning coffee, the same ritual I'd performed for over 50 years, when the doorbell rang. Through the frosted glass, I could see Marcus's familiar silhouette, broad shoulders hunched against the cold. My heart did that foolish little flutter it always did when one of my children showed up unexpectedly. Even now, even after everything, some part of me still hoped. "Happy birthday, Mom." He stepped inside, stamping snow off his boots onto the mat I'd placed there 30 years ago. At 45, Marcus still had the face of the boy who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, but his eyes had gone hard somewhere along the way. "You're early," I said, checking the clock. It wasn't even 9 in the morning. "Yeah, well, I wanted to catch you before you made any plans." He was fidgeting with his car keys, not meeting my eyes. "Listen, Mom, Sarah and David and we've been talking." The coffee maker gurgled behind me, filling the silence. I knew that tone. It was the same one he'd used when he was 12 and had broken my favorite vase, the one Harold had given me for our first anniversary. The tone that said he was about to deliver bad news and wanted to get it over with quickly. "We think you should get out more. You know, do something special for your birthday." I turned to face him fully. "Such as? There's this place up in the mountains, near Duluth. Really beautiful this time of year. We thought you might like to take a little trip." The coffee finished brewing with a final, decisive gurgle. I poured myself a cup, my hands perfectly steady. 75 years of life teaches you to recognize when you're being managed. How thoughtful of you all to discuss my birthday plans without me. Marcus shifted his weight from foot to foot. "It's not like that, Mom. We just want you to have a nice day. A special day. And you've arranged this trip for me? Well, sort of. There's a car coming to pick you up. Should be here any minute, actually." He glanced at his watch. "The driver will take you up there, show you around, maybe stop at some scenic spots. It'll be nice, relaxing." I sipped my coffee and studied my youngest son's face. The boy who used to beg me to read him one more story was gone, replaced by a stranger who couldn't quite look at his own mother while lying to her. "And when will this car bring me back?" "Oh, you know, when you're ready." His phone buzzed and he pulled it out, scrolling through messages. "Actually, Mom, I should probably get going. Early meeting today." "On Saturday?" "You know how it is." He was already backing toward the door. "The car should be here soon. Driver's name is... Let me check." He squinted at his phone. Ray Morrison. Nice guy, apparently. He'll take good care of you." A car horn honked outside. Marcus practically sagged with relief. "That's probably him now. You should get your coat, maybe pack a small bag, just in case you want to stay overnight at one of those bed and breakfasts up there." I set down my coffee cup with deliberate care. "Marcus." "Yeah, Mom?" "Look at me." He finally met my eyes, and I saw something there that made my blood run cold. Not guilt, exactly. Not even embarrassment. It was the look you give someone you're trying not to think about too hard. "Are you planning to come with me on this birthday adventure?" I wish I could, but like I said, Are Sarah and David meeting us there? Mom, we just thought, are any of my children planning to spend my 75th birthday with me? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. The car honked again, more insistently this time. You really should go, Marcus said finally. The driver's waiting. I walked to the front closet and pulled out my coat, a navy wool one that Harold had bought me for our 40th anniversary. As I slipped it on, I caught sight of myself in the hallway mirror. 75 years old, 5 feet 4 inches of Minnesota pragmatism, gray hair pulled back in the same neat bun I'd worn for decades. I looked like exactly what I was. Somebody's grandmother, somebody's mother, somebody who should be surrounded by family on her birthday instead of being shuffled off like an inconvenience. Mom? Marcus was hovering by the door, his hand on the knob. You're not mad, are you? I looked at him for a long moment. This man I'd carried for 9 months, labored 18 hours to bring into the world, nursed through pneumonia when he was 6, taught to drive, sent to college, bailed out of 3 different financial crises in the past 5 years. No, sweetheart, I said, picking up my purse. I'm not mad. I was something much more dangerous than mad. I was awake. The car waiting outside was a black sedan, unremarkable except for how clean it was despite the October slush. Through the windshield, I could see the driver, an older man, maybe 60, with silver hair and steady hands on the steering wheel. Marcus walked me to the car, playing the part of the dutiful son for any neighbors who might be watching. He even opened the door for me. Have a great day, Mom. Happy birthday. As I settled into the back seat, I heard him say to the driver, Take her to the mountains. This will be her last birthday. The words hit me like a physical blow. Not because I didn't understand what he meant. I understood perfectly. This was my last birthday as their mother, their responsibility, their problem. After today, I would be someone else's concern. A facility's concern, most likely. Somewhere clean and efficient where they could visit me on holidays if they felt like it. The car pulled away from the curb, and I watched my house, my life, shrink in the rear window. Marcus was already walking back to his own car, probably calling Sarah or David to report that the deed was done. Mrs. Brennan? The driver's voice was deep, careful. I'm Ray Morrison. I'll be taking care of you today. I leaned forward to get a better look at him in the rearview mirror, and when our eyes met, my body trembled with recognition. Because I knew that face. I knew those steady brown eyes, that careful way of speaking, that particular set to his shoulders. Ray Morrison. Sergeant Ray Morrison, 1st Infantry Division. The young soldier whose life I'd saved 30 years ago, half a world away, when I was a Red Cross volunteer in Germany and he was bleeding out in a Frankfurt hospital with no family, no visitors, no one who cared whether he lived or died. Until now. The silence in the car stretched like a taut wire. Ray Morrison kept his eyes on the road, but I could see the recognition dawning in the set of his jaw, the way his grip tightened on the steering wheel. 30 years had changed us both. Me from a 45-year-old Red Cross volunteer with purpose in her step to this discarded old woman, him from a broken 19-year-old soldier to whatever he'd become in the decades since. You remember me, I said. It wasn't a question. His eyes found mine in the rearview mirror again. Mrs. Charlotte Brennan, Frankfurt General Hospital, 1994. His voice was steady, professional, but I caught the slight tremor underneath. You sat with me for 3 days when the doctors said I probably wouldn't make it. 4 days, I corrected. And you did make it. Because of you. I studied his reflection, noting the lines around his eyes, the silver threading through hair that had once been black as coal. He wore a simple gray jacket over a white shirt, no wedding ring. There was something careful about the way he held himself, like a man who'd learned not to take up too much space in the world. What are the odds, I murmured, that my son would hire the one person in Minnesota who owes me a debt? Ray's laugh was dry, without humor. Your son didn't hire me, Mrs. Brennan. Something cold settled in my stomach. Then who did? He turned onto Highway 35, heading north toward Duluth and the mountains beyond. The city fell away behind us, giving way to the kind of stark Minnesota landscape that looked beautiful in postcards and brutal in person. I've been keeping track of you for 30 years, he said quietly. Not in a creepy way, he added quickly. Just checking in. making sure you were okay. You saved my life, and I never forgot that. Never forgot you. You've been watching me, watching over you. There's a difference. He signaled to pass a slow-moving truck. I know about Harold's death 2 years ago. I know about your children. I know about the way they treat you. The coffee I'd drunk earlier turned to acid in my stomach. How much do you know? Enough. His voice had gone hard. I know Marcus owes $30,000 to his bookie and another $20,000 to his cocaine dealer. I know Sarah's been skimming from the PTA fund to pay for her husband's gambling debts. I know David's been cheating on his wife with his paralegal while billing clients for hours he spends in hotel rooms. My hands clenched in my lap. These were my children he was talking about, the babies I'd nursed and raised and sacrificed everything for. But even as maternal instinct flared, a colder part of me whispered that none of this surprised me. I'd seen the signs for years. The desperate phone calls about money, the evasive answers about their lives, the way they looked at me like I was an ATM machine with an inconvenient personality attached. And you know about today, I said. I know they paid me $5,000 to drive you to Shady Pines Assisted Living Facility up in Brainerd. I know they've already signed the papers committing you for observation based on concerns about your mental state. I know they're planning to sell your house while you're locked up, and I know they've already divided up the proceeds. The words hit me like physical blows. Each revelation was a betrayal layered on top of betrayal, but underneath the pain was something else. A clarity so sharp it cut through 30 years of willful blindness. My mental state, I repeated. Apparently you've been acting erratically, forgetting things, making poor financial decisions. At least, that's what the paperwork says. I laughed, and the sound that came out of me was nothing like the woman who'd made coffee and tried to hope just hours earlier. Poor financial decisions, like the $10,000 I gave Marcus last month for his business opportunity, or the $15,000 I loaned Sarah for Emma's college fund that somehow never made it to Emma's account. They're good at what they do, Ray said grimly. They've been setting this up for months. Phone calls to your doctor expressing concern, meetings with social workers, building a case. The Minnesota landscape rolled past the windows, bare trees, gray sky, the kind of desolate beauty that matched the wasteland my life had become. But something else was building inside me, something that felt like the first warm day after a killing winter. You said they paid you $5,000. That's right, but you're not taking me to Shady Pines. No, ma'am, I'm not. I leaned back in my seat, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. The presence of an ally. Someone who saw what I saw, who understood what had been done to me. Where are we going, Ray? My cabin, up near Grand Marais. It's isolated, quiet, a place where you can think without interruption. He glanced at me in the mirror. And a place where 3 ungrateful children can't find you while you decide what to do next. What to do next? I repeated, tasting the words. For so long, my life had been about responding to other people's needs, other people's crises, other people's demands. The idea that I might have choices, might have agency, felt foreign and exhilarating. Mrs. Brennan, Charlotte, I need you to understand something. Your children think you're a problem that can be managed, contained, disposed of. They see you as weak, as finished. They're wrong. Am I? The question came out smaller than I intended. Ray pulled off the highway at a rest stop overlooking Lake Superior. The water stretched to the horizon, gray and limitless under the October sky. He turned in his seat to face me directly. In Frankfurt, when I was dying from blood loss and infection, when the doctors had written me off, you didn't see a lost cause. You saw someone worth fighting for. You sat by my bed, held my hand, talked to me when I was delirious. You fought the nurses when they wanted to move me to make room for soldiers they thought had better chances. You saved my life not through medicine, but through sheer force of will. I remembered those days in the hospital, the antiseptic smell, the sounds of young men dying too far from home. I'd volunteered because Harold was deployed, and the children were old enough to stay with my mother for a few weeks. I'd thought I was just doing my civic duty. That woman, the one who wouldn't let a 19-year-old soldier die alone, she's still in there, Ray continued. Your children have spent years convincing you that you're nothing without them. that your value is tied to what you can provide for them. But I've been watching and I've seen the truth, which is, you're the strongest person I've ever known. And now you're free. The word hung in the air between us like a benediction. Free. When was the last time I'd felt free? When was the last time I'd made a decision based on what I wanted instead of what someone else needed from me? They'll look for me, I said. Eventually. But they're not expecting resistance. They think you'll go quietly, the way you always have. By the time they realize you're not at Shady Pines, by the time they start asking questions, you'll have had time to plan. Plan what? Ray's smile was sharp as winter wind. Your revenge, Charlotte. The kind they'll never see coming because they've never bothered to really see you. As he started the car and pulled back onto the highway, I felt something shifting inside me, like tectonic plates finding a new alignment. For 75 years, I'd been someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's mother. I'd defined myself through service, through sacrifice, through the needs of others. But sitting in that car, watching the landscape of my old life disappear behind me, I began to understand what Ray had tried to tell me. I wasn't their problem to be solved anymore. I was their reckoning, and it was long overdue. Ray's cabin sat on a bluff overlooking Lake Superior, a simple structure of weathered cedar and stone that seemed to grow from the landscape itself. As we pulled into the gravel driveway, I could see why he'd chosen this place. It was the kind of isolation that either drove you mad or made you dangerously clear-headed. "Welcome to your new headquarters," Ray said, carrying my small overnight bag to the front door. Inside, the cabin was spartanly furnished but comfortable. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, flanked by bookshelves filled with military histories and philosophy texts. A laptop sat open on a simple wooden table, its screen displaying what looked like financial records. "Coffee?" Ray asked, already moving toward the kitchen. "Please." I settled into a chair at the table, close enough to see the laptop screen. The spreadsheet displayed 3 columns of numbers, each headed with a familiar name: Marcus, Sarah, David. Ray returned with 2 steaming mugs and noticed my attention. "I told you I'd been keeping track. Your children's finances are illuminating." I studied the numbers. Marcus's debts were even worse than Ray had mentioned. Not just the gambling and drugs, but maxed-out credit cards, a second mortgage on his house, unpaid child support from his first marriage. Sarah's column showed a pattern of small thefts and fraudulent charges going back years. David's was more sophisticated. Shell companies, offshore accounts, tax evasion schemes that would make a forensic accountant weep. "How did you get all this?" 20 years in Army intelligence leaves you with certain skills," Ray said dryly. "And certain contacts. Your children aren't nearly as clever as they think they are." I sipped my coffee and felt something crystallizing in my chest, hard and sharp as winter ice. These numbers weren't just evidence of financial irresponsibility. They were proof of a lifetime of lies, manipulation, and contempt for the woman who'd raised them. "They're desperate," I observed. "Desperate enough to commit their own mother to steal her assets, yes." Ray pulled up another document. "The paperwork for Shady Pines shows they're planning to liquidate everything. Your house, your savings, Harold's life insurance, even your jewelry. They've estimated your total worth at just over $400,000. $400,000? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what 47 years of marriage and 3 children are worth? To them, apparently. I stood and walked to the window. Lake Superior stretched endlessly before me, its gray waters reflecting the overcast sky. Somewhere out there, my children were probably celebrating. Marcus would be calling his bookie. Sarah would be calculating how much she could skim before anyone noticed, and David would be planning his next tax dodge. "They think I'm already gone," I said. "For all practical purposes, you are." Charlotte Brennan, devoted mother and grandmother, died this morning when she got in that car. The question is, who are you now? I turned back to face him. Ray was watching me with the intense focus I remembered from those hospital days in Frankfurt, like he was trying to see past the surface to whatever lay beneath. "I'm someone who's been underestimated for far too long," I said. Ray smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him. "Good. Then let's talk about what comes next." He pulled out a legal pad covered with notes in neat, precise handwriting. Your children have made several critical mistakes. First, they assumed you'd go quietly. Second, they've left electronic trails of their financial crimes. Third, they've involved multiple institutions in their fraud. Banks, insurance companies, legal firms. That gives us leverage. Us? You saved my life once, Charlotte. I figure I owe you at least one favor in return. His expression hardened. Besides, I've spent 30 years watching good people get used and discarded by those who should protect them. It's time someone paid the price. I sat back down and studied his notes. They were comprehensive, detailed, ruthless. Ray had mapped out not just my children's crimes, but their weaknesses, their pressure points, their worst fears. You've been planning this for a while. I've been preparing for the possibility. I knew eventually they'd push too far, and when they did, you'd need options. He flipped to a fresh page. The question is, how far are you willing to go? The old Charlotte, the one who'd made excuses for her children's behavior, who'd believed that love and patience could heal any wound, would have hesitated, but that woman had died in the back seat of a black sedan when she heard her son say this would be her last birthday. As far as necessary, I said. Ray nodded approvingly. Then let's start with Marcus. His debts aren't just financial embarrassments, they're criminal liabilities. His bookie has connections to organized crime, and his drug dealer has been arrested twice for trafficking. Marcus thinks he's protected because he's middle class and white, but desperation makes people careless. He showed me printed emails, text messages, bank transfers, a paper trail of Marcus's spiral into addiction and gambling. One phone call to the right people, and Marcus becomes a person of interest in a major drug investigation. His teaching job, his house, his custody of his daughter, all gone. And Sarah? Sarah's embezzlement from the PTA is just the tip of the iceberg. She's been running a charity scam through her church, collecting donations for fictional causes and pocketing the money. The IRS would be very interested in her tax returns for the past 5 years. The documentation was damning. Sarah, who presented herself as the perfect suburban mother, had been systematically defrauding her community for years. The amounts were small individually, a few hundred here, 1,000 there, but they added up to grand theft. David's the most sophisticated, Ray continued, but that makes him the most vulnerable. His law firm has strict ethical guidelines, and what he's been doing would get him disbarred and probably imprisoned. Tax evasion, client fund misappropriation, fraud, he's built his entire lifestyle on criminal activity. I studied the evidence Ray had compiled. It was thorough, professional, devastating. With this information, I could destroy all 3 of my children's lives with a few phone calls. They're not expecting you to fight back, Ray said quietly. They think you're just a confused old woman who'll disappear quietly into institutional care. They have no idea what's coming. What is coming exactly? Ray leaned back in his chair. That depends on what you want, Charlotte. Do you want justice? Revenge? Or do you want to simply disappear and let them wonder what happened to their meal ticket? I considered the options. Justice meant involving the authorities, letting the legal system handle their crimes. It was clean, proper, the kind of thing the old Charlotte would have chosen. Revenge was messier, more personal, more satisfying. Disappearing was perhaps the cruelest option of all, leaving them to face the consequences of their actions without the safety net they'd taken for granted. I want them to understand, I said finally. I want them to know what it feels like to lose everything, to be betrayed by someone they trusted, to realize that the person they dismissed as irrelevant holds their entire future in her hands. All 3 of them? All 3. My voice was steady, final. They made this choice together. They can face the consequences together. Ray made a note on his pad. It'll take some coordination, but it's doable. The key is timing. We hit them all at once, before any of them can warn the others or take protective measures. As he outlined the plan, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades. Power. Real power. Not the illusory authority of motherhood, or the borrowed influence of being Harold's wife, but the cold, clean power of someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. My children had taught me well. though they didn't know it. They'd shown me that family loyalty was a luxury I could no longer afford, that love could be weaponized, that the people closest to you were often the ones most capable of destruction. Now it was time to show them what I'd learned. The old Charlotte was dead. The woman sitting in this cabin, planning the systematic destruction of 3 lives, was someone new, someone harder, someone who understood that some betrayals were unforgivable, and some lessons could only be taught through loss. My 75th birthday was ending, but my real life, the one where I made the rules, was just beginning. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, the kind of October day that makes you believe in fresh starts. I stood on Ray's deck with my second cup of coffee, watching the sun paint Lake Superior in shades of gold and silver, and felt more alive than I had in years. Ray emerged from the cabin carrying his laptop and a manila folder thick with documents. Sleep well? Better than I have in months? It was true. For the first time since Harold's death, I'd slept without the weight of other people's expectations pressing down on me. Are we ready? Almost. I made some calls this morning. Ray set up his equipment on the deck table. Your children are starting to panic. Shady Pines called them around midnight when you didn't arrive. Marcus has been calling your house every hour. Sarah drove over to check on you. She's the one who found your note. I smiled, remembering the brief message I'd asked Ray to leave on my kitchen counter. Gone for a drive. Don't wait up. Simple, innocuous, and probably driving them insane with worry. David? David's trying to track down the car service. He's called 3 companies so far, getting more agitated with each dead end. Ray pulled up a recording on his laptop. I think you'll enjoy this. David's voice filled the morning air, sharp with frustration. I need to know where that driver took my mother. This is a family emergency. She's not well, mentally, and she could be in danger. The receptionist's bored voice responded, Sir, I've told you 3 times. We don't have any record of a pickup at that address yesterday. That's impossible. Someone had to. Sir, if you continue to raise your voice, I'm going to hang up. Ray stopped the recording. He's called 6 more companies since then. Each conversation gets more desperate. I sipped my coffee and savored the taste of their panic. For decades, I'd been the one worrying, the one frantically making phone calls, the one losing sleep over their problems. The role reversal was delicious. Time to make them an offer, I said. Ray opened the folder and spread out 3 typed letters, each addressed to one of my children. These go out this afternoon, certified mail, signature required. They'll receive them tomorrow morning. I picked up Marcus's letter and read it aloud. Dear Marcus, by now you've realized I'm not where you expected me to be. I'm sure you're concerned about my well-being, just as I've been concerned about yours. I know about the gambling debts, the cocaine, the money you've stolen from me over the years. I know about Tommy Marcelli and what happens to people who owe him money. I also know about the plan to have me committed so you could steal my assets. We need to talk. You have 48 hours to transfer $50,000 to the account number below, or copies of the evidence I've gathered about your criminal activities go to the police, the DEA, and Tommy Marcelli. Your choice. Mother. The words felt powerful in my mouth, each syllable a small act of rebellion against decades of being dismissed and manipulated. Sarah's letter was equally direct. Dear Sarah, I hope Emma's college fund is still intact, because you're going to need it for legal fees. I have documentation of your embezzlement from the PTA, your charity fraud, and your tax evasion. The amounts may seem small to you, but they add up to federal crimes. Transfer $25,000 to the account below within 48 hours, or face the consequences. I'm sure the other PTA mothers would be fascinated to learn how their fundraising money has been spent. Your choice. Mother. David's letter was the longest, detailing his shell companies, offshore accounts, and client fund manipulations with the precision of a legal brief. His price was $100,000, the highest, because his crimes were the most sophisticated and his betrayal the most calculated. $175,000 total, Ray observed. Less than half of what they planned to steal from you. It's not about the money, I said, though the symmetry was satisfying. It's about power, about making them understand that their actions have consequences. And if they don't pay? I smiled. and it felt like winter wind. Then we moved to phase 2. Ray pulled out another set of documents. I've prepared comprehensive evidence packages for the appropriate authorities. Marcus's goes to the Minneapolis Police Department, the DEA, and his bookie's competitors. Let them all fight over who gets to destroy him first. Sarah's goes to the IRS, the FBI's white-collar crime division, and every parent in her children's school district. David's goes to the Minnesota Bar Association, the FBI, and his law firm's ethics board. The precision of it was beautiful. Each package tailored to cause maximum damage. Each recipient chosen for their ability to inflict specific types of pain. Ray had spent 30 years learning how to dismantle lives professionally, and he'd brought all that expertise to bear on my children's destruction. There's one more element, Ray said, pulling up a new document on his laptop. I've been in contact with a journalist at the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. She specializes in stories about elder abuse and financial exploitation. If your children don't cooperate, she's prepared to run a front-page story about their treatment of you. The headline was already written. Local teacher, church leader, and attorney conspire to defraud elderly mother. Below it, a detailed account of their scheme, complete with documentation and quotes from sources close to the investigation. Public humiliation, I murmured. The one thing they fear more than prison. David especially. His reputation is everything to him. A scandal like this would end his career permanently. I imagined David's face when he saw that headline, when his colleagues and clients learned what he'd done to his own mother. The thought filled me with a satisfaction so pure it was almost spiritual. They'll try to contact me, I said. Let them. In fact, I've prepared for that too. Ray showed me a burner phone. This number is in the letters. When they call, and they will, you'll have complete control of the conversation. Record everything. Let them incriminate themselves further. The phone rang as if summoned by our conversation. The caller ID showed Marcus's number. Already? Ray raised an eyebrow. They work fast when they're desperate. I answered on the 4th ring. Hello, Marcus? Mom! Jesus Christ, where are you? We've been worried sick. His voice was high with panic and poorly concealed anger. You can't just disappear like that. What if something had happened to you? Something did happen to me, I said calmly. I woke up. What? Mom, you're not making sense. Look, whatever's going on, we can work it out. Just tell me where you are and I'll come get you. I'm exactly where I need to be. The question is, are you where you need to be? Have you checked your mail today? My mail? What are you talking about? You will, soon. I could hear him breathing heavily, probably pacing. Marcus, do you remember when you were 7 and you broke Mrs. Henderson's window with your baseball? What? No, Mom, what does that have to do with anything? You lied to me about it, said it was an accident, that the ball just slipped. But I knew better. I always knew when you were lying. You get this tone in your voice, like you're trying too hard to sound innocent. I paused. You have that tone now. Mom, I don't understand what's happening. Are you having some kind of episode? Because if you are, I'm having a moment of clarity, I interrupted. Probably the first one in years. Tell me, Marcus, how much money do you owe Tommy Marcelli? The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear his world tilting on its axis. How did you? 48 hours, I said, and hung up. Ray was grinning. That was masterful. Cold, controlled, devastating. I learned from the best, I said. Meaning him, but also meaning them. My children had spent years teaching me how to be ruthless, how to use love as a weapon, how to manipulate through guilt and obligation. They'd been excellent teachers. The phone rang again. Sarah this time. I let it ring 6 times before answering. Hello, Sarah. Mom, thank God. Marcus said he talked to you, but you hung up on him? What's going on? Are you okay? I'm better than I've been in years. How's the PTA treasury, dear? Another silence. Another world shifting. I don't know what you mean. 24 hours and counting, I said, and ended the call. David called before I could set the phone down. I let it go to voicemail, then played his message on speaker. Mother, I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but it ends now. Whatever nonsense Marcus and Sarah have filled your head with, we can discuss it rationally, like adults. Call me back immediately. Ray and I looked at each other and laughed, really laughed, for the first time since this began. He still thinks he's in control, Ray observed. Not for much longer, I said. The old Charlotte would have called him back, would have tried to explain, would have sought his approval and understanding. But the old Charlotte was gone, and in her place sat a woman who had finally learned that some people only understand power. My children were about to get an education in consequences, and I was going to enjoy every minute of it. 48 hours later, I sat at Ray's kitchen table watching the sun rise over Lake Superior, for what I knew would be the last time from this vantage point. The burner phone lay silent beside my coffee cup. No desperate calls, no frantic voicemails, no wire transfers to the account Ray had established. My children had made their choice. Nothing? Ray asked, though he could see the answer on my face. Radio silence since yesterday afternoon. I sipped my coffee, savoring the bitter taste. David tried calling from his office number around midnight. I didn't answer. Ray pulled up his laptop and began typing with the methodical precision of a man who'd ended careers before. The evidence packages go out in 1 hour. The journalist publishes her story online at noon, print edition tomorrow morning. By sunset tonight, your children will be unemployed, under investigation, and publicly humiliated. Good. The word came out flat, final. No regret, no maternal anguish, no last-minute doubts. They'd had 48 hours to acknowledge what they'd done, to show even a shred of remorse or respect. Instead, they'd chosen to ignore me, probably hoping I'd simply disappear like the problem they'd always considered me to be. The laptop chimed with an incoming email. Ray frowned as he read it. What is it? Marcus just maxed out another credit card. $15,000 withdrawn as cash advance an hour ago. Ray's fingers flew over the keyboard. Sarah emptied her children's college funds this morning. Both accounts, completely drained. And David? Ray's expression darkened. David just transferred $150,000 from his client trust account to a personal offshore account. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. They're running. Looks like it. But they're too late, and they're making it worse for themselves. Taking money from client accounts is a federal crime. Sarah stealing her children's college funds will destroy her in family court. And Marcus... Ray pulled up another screen. Marcus's cash withdrawal was captured on 3 different security cameras. His bookie's people have been watching him. They think they can escape the consequences by running away, I said. Just like they thought they could escape responsibility by putting me in a home. The phone rang. I recognized the number. Marcus, calling from what was probably a burner phone of his own. I answered without speaking. Mom. His voice was raw, desperate. Mom, please. I know you're there. I'm here. We need to talk, face to face. This has gone too far. Has it? I don't think it's gone nearly far enough. Mom, please. I'll do whatever you want. We all will. Just call off whatever you're planning. Please. The begging in his voice should have moved me. For 75 years it would have. But that woman was gone, buried under decades of manipulation and betrayal. You had 48 hours to do whatever I wanted, Marcus. That time has passed. We couldn't get the money. It's not like we have that kind of cash lying around. But you found money to run away with, I observed. Interesting priorities. Mom, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're facing consequences for your actions, and you can't handle it. Just like when you were 7 and blamed the neighbor's cat for breaking Mrs. Henderson's window. This isn't about some fucking window. The desperation had turned to rage. You're destroying our lives. No, Marcus. You destroyed your own lives. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it. I hung up and turned to Ray. Send everything. Ray's fingers hovered over the keyboard for just a moment. You're sure? Once this starts, there's no taking it back. There was no taking it back the moment they put me in that car and told the driver it was my last birthday. Ray nodded and pressed enter. Then enter again. And again. Across Minneapolis, phones began ringing. Email inboxes chimed with new messages. Fax machines hummed to life. The machinery of justice and destruction ground into motion. Within the hour, Marcus's school principal received a detailed report about his drug use and gambling debts. The DEA got comprehensive records of his dealer connections. His ex-wife's lawyer received documentation that would end his custody rights permanently, and Tommy Marcelli's competitors learned exactly where to find a man who owed money and had just withdrawn $15,000 in cash. Sarah's church received copies of her fraudulent charity paperwork. The IRS got 5 years of tax returns showing unreported income. Every parent in her children's school district received an email detailing how their PTA funds had been stolen. Her husband's employer learned about his gambling debts and her role in hiding them. David's law firm received evidence of his client fund theft, tax evasion, and ethical violations. The Minnesota Bar Association got copies of everything. The FBI's white-collar crime unit received a package that would keep them busy for months. And at exactly noon, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune published Mother's Last Gift, How 3 Adult Children Conspired to Steal Their Parents' Life. Ray refreshed the newspaper's website and showed me the article. My photo, a dignified headshot from Harold's funeral, appeared next to mugshot-style pictures of Marcus, Sarah, and David that the journalist had pulled from social media. The story laid out their scheme in devastating detail, complete with financial records, legal documents, and quotes from concerned family friends who had witnessed my children's treatment of me over the years. The comment section was already filling with outraged readers. Disgusting. How could they do this to their own mother? I hope they all rot in prison. It's done, Ray said quietly. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no regret, no relief. Just a cold emptiness where my maternal feelings used to live. My phone rang. Sarah this time sobbing before I even said hello. Mom, they fired Jeff. The bank called in our mortgage. The school won't let me pick up the kids. They say I'm under investigation for theft. Her voice broke. Please, Mom. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Just make it stop. I can't make it stop, Sarah. That's not how consequences work. But we're family. We're your children. No, I said, my voice steady as stone. My children died when they decided I was worth more to them dead than alive. You're just strangers who happen to share my DNA. I ended the call and turned off the phone. The next call came on Ray's landline. David, his lawyer's composure completely shattered. What have you done? He screamed. What have you fucking done? Ray put the call on speaker. David, this is Ray Morrison. Your mother is here and she can hear you. I don't care. Do you know what you've cost me? My career is over. My marriage is over. Everything I've worked for. Everything you stole, I corrected. Everything you built on lies and theft, and the assumption that I was too weak to fight back. You crazy bitch! You've destroyed us. Good, I said, and Ray hung up. Over the next 3 hours, we watched my children's lives disintegrate in real time. Marcus was arrested at a truck stop outside Fargo, beaten bloody by men who'd been tracking him for Tommy Marcelli. Sarah was detained by federal agents as she tried to board a plane to Mexico. David was taken into custody at his office, handcuffed in front of his partners and clients. By evening, it was over. All 3 of my children were in jail, their assets frozen, their reputations destroyed, their futures erased. Ray found me on the deck watching the sunset paint Lake Superior in shades of fire. Any regrets? He asked. I considered the question seriously. Somewhere in Minneapolis, 3 people who had emerged from my body were sitting in jail cells, facing years of imprisonment and lives permanently ruined. They would lose their homes, their jobs, their children, their freedom. Everything they'd built would crumble, and they would have nothing left but the consequences of their own choices. No, I said finally. No regrets. Ray nodded and handed me a set of car keys. Your car. I had it brought up from Minneapolis yesterday. Where will you go? I asked. I've done what I came to do. You're free now, Charlotte. Free to be whoever you want to be. I looked at the keys in my palm. Such small things, but they represented something I hadn't possessed in decades. Choice. Agency. The power to determine my own path. Thank you, I said. For everything. Ray smiled. The same smile I remembered from a Frankfurt hospital 30 years ago, when a broken young soldier realized he was going to live. Thank you, he said, for teaching me that some people are worth saving, and some people aren't. I drove away from the cabin as the last light faded from the sky, leaving behind the woman who had sacrificed everything for people who saw her as nothing more than an inconvenience to be managed. My name is Charlotte Brennan. I am 75 years old. I have no children. And I have never been more free. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, blood may be thicker than water, but some ties are meant to be cut.